Hello, Chevet.
Hey everyone, how's everyone doing? Good to see
Doing
you.
great. How are you? That's really the question.
Oh, I'm doing really well. We have just had a massive rainfall here in New Delhi. I'm of course like I typically work from Bangalore, but I was just over the weekend. I was at an event for the Google Cloud Community Day where I presented around our Google Gemini integration with Couchbase Lite. And I know that some of you folks might be aware that we had a general availability for the Couchbase Lite vector search. And one of the biggest announcements was that now I think we have a support for the Couchbase Lite with React Native. So you'll probably see a
That's
lot of
huge
content
news.
coming around that.
That's really, really big news.
Absolutely.
Wow, that's big. So we now have vector search capability in Couchbase Lite. We have support for React Native.
Yeah,
That enables quite a lot for mobile devs.
absolutely. Because I know like I had to basically learn Kotlin from scratch when I just started off here working on some of the mobile projects, because of course we had to kind of build certain examples for Couchbase mobile, and of course I didn't completely know about Android and Kotlin, but of course for someone who is a JS developer, React Native will be a much more easier way for them to be able to jump into programming with Couchbase mobile. So super excited to see. We already have, in fact, a couple of really good videos on our YouTube channel around how you can set up the app services. And in fact, now with app services, it's not just limited to the default scopes and collections. You have named scopes and collections as well. So you can have multiple collections and store them individually and connect them via app services to Capella. So a lot of interesting stuff happening. And in fact, like the next couple of streams that we'll have as part of our DevRel streams here at Couchbase, we will cover the Couchbase mobile side. So really looking forward to those streams as well.
I mean, I think that's amazing. I think something you said there, Chevet, really struck to me as well, which is that, the transition from being a JS dev to working in mobile and React Native is easier than being a JS dev having to learn Kotlin from scratch. And I
Yeah,
think it's a lot of what I really liked about Couchbase, and I've only been here for a few months, I'm really kind of new too, is that even our query language is something that you don't need to make a big cognitive jump in learning a new query language. You can write to our JSON document database using something that looks exactly like SQL. You don't need to learn a
yeah,
new thing that we try, it seems like from a DevX perspective, to try and make it as stress-free as we possibly can, as
exactly.
easy as we possibly can to get what you need done, to build what you need, and not have to
Yeah,
deal with all the hiccups and hangups and issues trying to learn new things. It's pretty cool.
exactly. Yeah,
Pretty,
for
pretty
sure.
cool.
And I think like today we are, as we're seeing that the better the developer experience is, that the more devs the product will use, right? So or more devs will use that particular product. So I think for us, like especially with all of the getting started guides and the starter kits, and like of course we'll be announcing those as well. So super excited to showcase those.
And just this week, we also announced that Couchbase put out in major release the first new ORM for the Ruby language in a
Yeah.
long time for non-relational databases. So, Ruby on Rails is known for having the first ORM ever published called Active
Yeah.
Record. If somebody's
Mhm.
watching a stream and I'm not right about that, please correct me, but I think it's the first. And then the ability to use a non-relational database with all the conveniences of
Yeah.
an ORM mapping to your objects is huge. We've had one for a while for Node.js with Ottoman.js, and now
Mhm.
we have the Ruby ORM. It's just a
Yeah.
pretty great new feature, and goes more to that idea that Couchbase tries to abstract and make it easier and just simplify the process for you, so you can actually just get stuff done.
Absolutely. That's true.
And as Mohammed said, thank you, Mohammed, for joining the chat. It is great. It is awesome. I agree with you, Mohammed, 100%.
Yeah, I mean, I think like just so many announcements are coming up, and I'm just super stoked for all of the live streams. It's great that we'll get that right from the AI stream that we have as part of this part two. Then we'll have the Couches mobile. Then we'll have a bunch of them for Hacktoberfest and all of the different open source repositories that we have. And I mean, that's really great that the company has this culture where there are so many different open source projects that are out there, which would love to highlight and get external contributors, because that's the most wonderful thing, like where you're able to get good community contributions, and finally then we'll get to build SaaS applications together. That's
So
like going
exciting. It's so
yeah,
exciting. Wait, so
absolutely.
Shive, you started this project on stream last week. Can you give us
Yes.
like a 30-second recap of what we did last week before we start
Yeah.
getting to what we're going to do today?
Yes, absolutely. So the last time we went over and we touched base upon what exactly is it to actually build full stack applications in 2024 in the month of August and September, because what we have seen over the past 1 month has been crazy. So many people are uploading videos, writing blogs on how they can prototype and build applications in a matter of a few minutes or hours, whereas it would have probably taken them a good few days to be able to build applications. Like, even especially designing UI, it's not easy, right? It takes time to actually build it. But with V0 from Vercel, you're able to actually just give a prompt like you would give it a prompt in ChatGPT, but instead of now not only generating the code, it will also render the actual UI. And now you can just import that entire UI component code, which is written in Next.js, and just start using it inside of an application with the help of just one single command. And then we looked at Cursor, which is an AI powered code editor, essentially a clone of VS Code that has inbuilt AI capabilities, whether it's the autocomplete or it is, let's say, if we talk about, the autocomplete, and then also the inbuilt chat where you can use a different type of large language models like Claude or GPT-4. So we explored that, how you set that up. And of course, I mean, within Couchbase, there are so many different AI capabilities that are inbuilt. Whether we talk about our LangChain and all of the different vector search integrations that we have, which empower Gen AI applications. And trust me, like, we are right now proactively working on a bunch of other integrations. I'll not probably spoil that. We will have a really good announcement for that. But let's just say that there are so many different tools today that allow us to build LLM or generative AI applications. So we also showcased how you actually set up the free tier. Yeah, I completely forgot. I should have probably started off with the free tier, that we officially announced the free tier on 9th of September. And now I think we are already like 8-9 days in, and we have seen a huge increase in number of folks starting out and trying out the free tier. So we built our free tier, we set up our account, and then connected to our VS Code extension inside of Couchbase in the Cursor, because Cursor essentially is capable of running all of the VS Code extensions. So we showcased how you can run the Couchbase extension inside of Cursor. And finally, we wrote our code for being able to connect to our Couchbase cluster using the Node SDK. So of course we covered a lot,
That
and
is a lot.
today's
Did that all
yeah
in one stream.
all in one
Very
stream. Yes.
ambitious. Very ambitious.
Yes. And
So,
again, the speed that you get is because of the AI.
so it helps increase your developer velocity, is what you're saying.
Exactly.
So what are we
For
doing
sure.
today? What's our work plan? Our ambitious, audacious work plan for today.
Yeah. So today, I mean, we have to achieve a lot. Let's see if we are able to achieve it in the next 15 minutes. But I am fairly confident, thanks to Cursor and the combination of Cursor and Claude, which everyone claims that it just increases your development speed by 10x. So we'll put that into its paces and see that how does it actually live to the hype. I mean, it did work very well in the first session, but let's see if it does live the hype. In fact, like, just in the last 1 week, we had GPT. Sorry, I forgot the name. 1.0, was it 1.0 or 1.0 preview? I know, like, you had shown one of the. I guess you had shown me a description of how it actually looks like. Ben, how was your experience using that model?
Using it
the
was
OpenAI model.
Yeah, no, it was actually pretty incredible. And I think what's incredible for me using is I've been building quite a lot with different AI models as well, just
Yeah.
in my own kind of spare time and building. What I appreciate about this one is the multi-step reasoning in the O1. in the new O1 model. It was the first time I really was able to experience the model taking another step beyond the initial assessment, evaluating its own assessment without me needing to further prompt for further evaluation. And then, of course, in the UI of ChatGPT, the chat interface, it gives you a window. I'm sure it's a filtered window, but it gives you a filtered window into getting to see that multi-step reasoning process occur. And I shared that screenshot with you because I was a bit blown away by that. It felt substantively different. It felt like another moment of beyond an increase in performance. It felt like actual something that was markedly different than what we were used to. We'll see how it continues. Remember, that's only a preview model. That was just
a preview model.
Yeah, so we'll see.
Absolutely. But yes, I think we should probably jump right in because we have limited amount of time and we have to achieve a lot. So I will quickly start sharing my screen, and again, probably a small prayer to the demo gods that we don't face any evils coming our way when it comes to like trying to run the demo.
And while you're sharing your screen, just a quick reminder to everyone while Shive loads the screen that if you have any questions, any comments, we are watching the comments in the chat from across the platforms. Please raise them and we'll get to them as soon as we can. And now we get the infinity screen, Shive.
Yes.
My favorite artifact of sharing screens is the infinity screen.
Yes.
But please, any questions or comments, please add them. We'll get to them as quickly as we can.
Absolutely. And just to kind of cover, right, so we first of all describe that we have the free tier. I would probably just like to spend the next 1 minute also again talking about the free tier because it is one of the most important announcements that we have made, especially in this year, because this unlocks so much amount of potential for any developer to have access to a free database cluster and a performant database cluster at will, because of course, like Couchbase is one of the most performant NoSQL database platforms. So now you have a free tier, free cluster, which will stay for perpetuity, and you don't. It's not just now limited to 30 days, and you can start using this and start building your applications with the help of this particular, with the help of the Capella cluster that we have created. So the goal over here is that in the last session, we created this live stream and then we had the shared scope and our docs collection. And in this case, now the idea is that we would use this same cluster and these and this particular collection in which we'll go ahead and actually store our documents. And just to kind of repeat what we wanted to build, so here is like a preview of our chat with PDF, which is essentially our UI component, which is completely built with the help of this prompt that I gave to V0. So in case you're not aware, V0 is a product right now from Vercel, which have been trained over most of the Next.js code that they have written, and it allows you to generate very easy components that you can also then interact to actually make it better. And then you can just import this into your Next.js code by just using this command, which is add to your code base, which is npx shadecn and this dedicated chat. So all of this really just helps you to quickly prototype your applications. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that whenever we are, of course, in our case, the entire structure of the application would be that initially we would basically start off with getting our chat with PDFs. In this case, we would upload a PDF file. Now, when you upload the PDF file, you would basically parse that PDF file and you would go ahead and create chunks from it. And then you would use an embedding model to actually create the embeddings. And then you would store it inside of the Couchbase vector store. Now, all of this will be handled with the help of our LangChain Couchbase integration, which is, and specifically, of course, like this is a TypeScript project. So I will just quickly open the documentation for our TypeScript. So in this case, we are going to be using the Couchbase integration where we connect to our cluster, we actually load our documents, and then we convert those particular documents. So in this case, like we have the vector database, and I'll go to Couchbase. Then we store our embeddings inside of with the help of the vector store. And then when it actually comes to finally being able to after we have created our vector store, then we can actually use the RAG pipeline within LangChain. So that RAG pipeline is essentially where you send in a prompt and you generate the response from that RAG pipeline. With, of course, by using the vector search, you're able to find the most relevant embeddings which are near, or using, if you think about the KNN algorithm, which are nearest to the prompt that you have given, and then you return that and pass that as additional context to your large language model response, and then you are able to generate a more meaningful result based on the context set by your PDF or whatever set of documents you have added to your vector store. So that's a basic example, and I will make sure to share the documentation around our LangChain integration. And we have a bunch of blogs and tutorials also available on our developer documentation that should help you to get started. But this is essentially what we'll plan to accomplish today, which is parse our PDF file, and from there we would go ahead and then set up our entire pipeline, our RAG pipeline, which we will go ahead and actually set up. So that's
For
our
those of us who don't
major.
know, Shive, can you just mention what RAG is briefly?
Yes. So RAG basically means retrieval augmented generation, and I think we might have a blog on Couchbase if I'm not mistaken, because of course, like, this might be a new concept to a few folks. So we have a good article, and we have actually had not just like this overview article. We have had multiple blogs which we have published around this concept. But for those folks who are not aware, so retrieval augmented generation is of course one of the latest advancements in terms of just trying to make the LLM responses better. Because as you might have probably experienced if you have used ChatGPT or any other large language model like Google Gemini or Grok, uh, if you have used it enough, you might be aware that sometimes the responses generated from these large language models is completely wrong, or it doesn't make sense. And that's where we say that the large language model is making is essentially hallucinating. And also, if you have some private documents, the public data on which these large language models have trained, the model would never have been able to train over your own private data, right? Because they have been trained over more public data. So of course it will not ever have context about your private document. So if you want the large language model to be able to respond to questions and queries based on your own private data, then you'll have to feed that, and either you can fine tune that particular model, but fine tuning can be a bit more expensive, or of course essentially with RAG, what essentially happens is that you have an external knowledge base, and then you essentially are able to use vector search queries or vector search or vector embeddings to find the most relevant documents, and then pass that alongside your prompt, so that now you're essentially giving more grounding to your large language model, and it is able to make more informed responses. So that's kind of a high level overview of what RAG means. Again, like, it has two systems. One is the retrieval section, and then the generation section. But we'll not go too deep into it because, of course, like,
That was
we
perfect. I think that was a
yeah,
nice, succinct explanation. Well done.
exactly.
It's as if you've done that a few times. That's what it came off as.
Yeah, I mean,
You know what you're
I think,
talking
like,
about.
yeah. I mean, we have had so many, at this point in time, we have had so many talks just around this. So, I mean, it's something that I would say, like, I'm fairly familiar at this point in time.
It
So,
comes off
but
as great. Good job, Shive.
yeah, but there are so many advancements being made in RAG itself. I mean, perhaps Ben, we should probably just have a dedicated session, like a live stream, high level thought leadership around what RAG is and how, of course, like, vector databases play a role. But it's not just like, people have this misconception that RAG is just limited to vector databases, but it's so much more. You have entire time-based context queries that you can actually add to RAG applications. So I was reading this article, and I know, like, we can probably go about discussing about this for the next 40 minutes, but I would say, like, yeah, we'll probably have this discussion in probably some other live stream. But yeah, that was a quick overview of RAG. But yes, back over to our application. So as we mentioned that last time, we had basically showcased this Couchbase connection TypeScript file. So in this, we showcase that how you can leverage, and let me actually zoom in a bit more. And again, for those folks who are not aware, I am currently using the Cursor code editor. So for those folks who are not aware, you can go to cursor.com and install your Cursor editor. And again, it's really good. I mean, I personally do like this inbuilt chat capability because I don't have a personal access to GitHub Copilot. So I prefer to use this inbuilt chat because it provides me some free to use Claude and GPT-4o models. And if I'm not mistaken, I think I did see that now we have support for, in fact, I think O1. So, in fact, we do actually have support for O1 and O1 preview, which is quite crazy that we are actually able to use these couple of latest models from OpenAI. So that's absolutely insane that we have that capability right now, which is like O1 Mini and the GPT-4o.
That's
which
pretty
is
cool.
quite crazy.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy. That's awesome.
But I think like we'll probably still use Claude 3.5 because it is still pretty quick. I think like one of the limitations of the newer models is that they're a bit slow because of that chain of thought. So we'll still stick to Claude 3.5 because it's still probably the fastest when it comes to iterating. But yeah, in the last session where we basically stopped was that we built our create Couchbase cluster endpoint. So this is where we are passing our DB connection string, our username and password, which we created when we signed up for our free tier. And here we just use the method to successfully connect to our cluster. Now, of course, if you want, you could just build a unit test over here, which can connect to the cluster and try to see if, and a lot of times, I know we have discussed this before, that you can either mock the database call, especially if you're like making a unit test, most likely you can mock a connection call. So it's totally up to you. In this particular session, we'll not really focus on that. But then, of course, we have all of the chat UI, which was actually generated from our V0. So we have our page.tsx, which is essentially managing all of the different components, where we will have the section for being able to upload your PDF file, and then we will render that PDF file. So for rendering the PDF file, we are basically going to be using something known as a PDF viewer. So we have the React PDF viewer library, which you can actually use in order to render that particular PDF file that will be displayed on the PDF. And of course, don't worry, like we will be sharing this entire code base with all of you. Now, of course, we also have a dedicated API section, and this is where what I did behind the scenes was that I just went ahead and created these two files because it might take a bit of time to actually write this. But essentially, we are going to be having two separate APIs over here. So we'll have two separate post requests. One is for being able to actually ingest our PDF. So this is where we would basically, as soon as we upload that PDF file, just think of this, that we have the entire PDF file, we divided into different bytes, and then using that buffer, we pass it into the PDF loader, which allows you to basically load and split your entire PDF content. And then we would use that to then generate the embeddings using the OpenAI embeddings. And for that, I've already gone ahead and created an OpenAI key. So for that case, you can just go to OpenAI and create a new account via the portal. Or, of course, the great thing about LangChain is that they have support for a bunch of different large language models. So if you don't want to pay money in order to create OpenAI, then you can actually basically either even use a local large language model thanks to Olama, or you can use Gemini, which is currently providing you free to use API key. So you can also sign up for the Google Vertex AI or Google Gemini. And in this case, I'll just use OpenAI. And LangChain has dedicated embeddings and LLM providers for both embeddings and for the LLMs. So you can pick and choose whatever particular type of LLM you actually want to use. So without now wasting any further time, let's proceed further. But yeah, I mean, Ben, if you wanted to perhaps share anything else, or are we good to go?
No, I think you're doing a great job, and I also really appreciate that you mentioned that you don't have to use OpenAI to
Exactly.
generate these things. I think some people feel like the money is the barrier because
Yeah.
this can get expensive pretty quickly, depending what you're
Exactly.
generating and how much data how many embeddings you're creating.
Yeah.
So the fact that you really called out attention to both the free offering by Gemini and also the local LLMs. I think that in itself, by the way, Shive, may one day be a stream of ours we do. How to use
Absolutely.
local LLM to generate some of these things.
Yeah.
No one
Yeah.
really talks about that. We should talk about that. That's important.
Yeah. And especially like for privacy reasons, if you don't want to send your private data to OpenAI, it's better that you can set up a Llama 3 server on your own VM, or even run that locally, and everything gets
100%.
processed.
And if you
Especially.
want to be the one person in the world, or the one entity, the one company, the one government not using OpenAI, and you want to do it locally, it seems like their rate of adoption is the faster than I've ever seen anywhere else. But the
Yeah.
idea of privacy first is something that I hold very strongly as well. And I think
Absolutely.
that's a really, really important aspect. So, Yalla, let's go ahead, Shive. I'm excited to see the next steps here.
Perfect, perfect. Yes. So as our next step, as now we will kick off our entire process for first of all creating our Couchbase connection. So in this case, we will import our Couchbase connection library from our library folder, which is this one, and we will go ahead and ingest our PDF file. So we have to accomplish a bunch of different things, but first let's start off with our most important imports. So in this case, we will import the next response, because of course we are going to be using the API. So of course with Next.js, if you are not already aware, like Next.js supports this API framework. So you don't need to have a dedicated Node.js application, thanks to the server-side rendering, and of course the server components, where you can just use client, and essentially you don't need to have a dedicated Node.js server running. So I think like Next.js as a framework is pretty strong. So we are going to be using that. Now, apart from that, of course, right now, what you're seeing is that this autocomplete that is coming from Cursor, right? It's coming directly from Cursor. So as soon as I'm actually adding whatever, it's already giving me suggestions on how I should use it. And
In
of course,
general,
like
do you like using autocomplete, or do you turn it off more often than not?
I think I do turn it off, because sometimes when I'm in a frame of mind that yes, I mean I need to write this function, sometimes I do feel that it's an hindrance. If I'm trying to build something in a new programming language, then it might make sense if I'm just like doing it for quickly prototyping something. But if I'm either learning some new concept, or if I am going to be building something from scratch and I want to just use my own logic, then I prefer not to use it. Then I prefer to use the chat, because I feel that the chat capability is a lot more powerful, because you get to decide when you want to use it.
Particularly when
And
you're already familiar with the framework or the language that you're working with a bit.
exactly.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
because right now, of course, I don't intend to directly just create this post request. I want to first slowly, first import all of my all of the dependencies that I want to use, and then I'll probably proceed with doing that. I could technically do this, right? It's just a tab connect away. But the first thing I want to just make sure is that I have all of the dependencies installed, and then we will go step by step and create our post request, which will have all of our different step by step process of like starting off with PDF uploading, and then creating the embeddings, and creating our function for being able to connect to our Couchbase cluster, right? So all of those will happen. So I'll probably do it step by step, but yes, hopefully like you see the capability of an inbuilt autocomplete. So if someone requires that, I mean, it's a great feature for sure, and it's
Amazing.
fairly accurate. Like even if you give it dynamic inputs, it's actually completely capable of being able to provide you dynamic responses based on, like, for example, if you give it I have these three numbers, add them, so like it will do a fairly accurate job of doing that. So it's one of the
That makes,
better autocomplete
yeah,
tools.
that makes perfect sense.
Yeah. Now, the other thing that I want to basically also import is so I mentioned about the being able to take your PDF file and then doing the splitting. So essentially, LangChain has a couple of things, right? So if you look at the LangChain Couchbase TypeScript SDK, or I guess like the NPM module, we have a couple of things that we want to basically use, right? And I think if I'm not mistaken, we can probably look at this Couchbase integration. Of course, like this is the npm. So what we are primarily kind of focused on is, and I'm not sure if this is probably the best example. We can probably go back to this one with the vector store and to Couchbase. So I just want to quickly first give a overview of what all dependencies you will actually need, right? So you would need to install Couchbase, the LangChain community. So essentially, the LangChain community is this entire hub of all of the potential integrations that are currently supported within LangChain, whether it's the LLMs, whether it's the vector stores. So whenever you are essentially adding any integration, whether it's the Couchbase vector store, you would basically do import from LangChain slash vector stores, then Couchbase. And then if you're using either the LLM, then it will be LangChain slash community slash LLMs, then OpenAI. So that's the typical way that you interact. It's a large monorepo with all of the community integrations built in. So
Right.
that's the one thing to keep in mind. So over here, like essentially what we want is, we want the character text splitter, because this is what we would need in order to actually split our entire PDF text into characters, and then we would convert them into the embeddings. So we would be using like the OpenAI embeddings. We'll be using the recursive character splitter from LangChain, which will allow us to actually take that entire PDF text. So let's proceed first with our recursive character. So I'll import that first. So recursive, and I think yeah. So we have this recursive text splitter from LangChain text splitter. So again, like that's where it basically saves me the time. And then
Right.
we also need of course OpenAI embeddings for sure. And
It's already guessing what you want to do next. See that?
exactly. So that's a good thing. And then we do need the Couchbase store, but we also do need the Couchbase vector store arguments. So we need yeah, this is actually wrong, because we need the Couchbase vector store, but we also need the Couchbase vector store arguments. That's perfect. So oh, it probably didn't work. So okay. Okay, I think perfect. Okay, perfect. Now it's fine. So now we have imported our vector store. That's pretty great. And then of course we can import our client. So in this case, we will import the Couchbase client, but it's actually not client. It is, if I'm not mistaken, create Couchbase cluster. So like it does not get everything right. So you still need to be aware that like you still need to be aware of and be able to control all of this, right? Because our method was the create Couchbase cluster rather than what it actually gave to us. Now, of course, in this case, like since we are uploading a PDF, we would also need a file path, since we are essentially now going to be writing into the file. So we need a couple of dependencies. So one thing that we'll do is we will import path, and here I'll just import it from path. And of course, like again, it gives me a bunch of code right now, but the other thing also to import is, like, since we are going to be importing the PDF loader, so I will also just import the PDF. So basically the PDF reader in this, or PDF, not reader. So basically PDF loader. So in this case, like because LangChain, again, it has inbuilt integrations for a bunch of different types of data types. So whether you have Excel files or you have PDFs, so it automatically comes
Right.
integrated with LangChain. So that's again another really impressive thing about. And over here, I think like this should be files with PDF. So this should be good. Okay, I mean, we will probably look at that particular issue, and then I think like this should be good enough. So we can probably now start with our function. So
So
in this
those are
case,
our
I would like to,
dependencies. That's enough for our dependencies. We have what
yes,
we
so
need.
that's pretty good enough for our dependencies. So now we can go ahead and create our function, our post request. So in
Our
this case,
async function,
this would,
of course.
yes, async post. So in this case, this would this I'll just pass in a request. So I think, and again, I'm not very comfortable when it comes to Next.js, so hopefully the AI is able to help me, and like especially if we come across any issues, probably the Claude that we have with us should be able to help us kind of walk through, because
Get
I
past
have
the
used like,
roadblocks.
yeah, because I've used React quite a bit. I have built some projects with Next before, but again, I'll not say like I'm super comfortable with it. But hopefully, like the autocomplete and this should be good enough. So
Well,
the first
we're
thing,
just two backend devs working on a
two backend devs.
end project. It sounds
Yeah,
delightful.
yeah.
It's
I mean,
comedy hour.
yeah. And especially like in this particular project, we don't actually have any typical backend, right? We are having our API directly within our Next.js project that is essentially acting like our as our backend.
Right.
So yeah, I think like the action plan over here is that first thing that we want to do is we want to first get our form data. From that form data, we want to get our file. So we want to basically define our form data. From there, we want to essentially get our file. So this is our PDF file, which we'll get. So the PDF file, and then what we want to, of course, like essentially do is create a method or just write a simple if condition that if our file doesn't exist, then it will just say that it will basically return that there is no error, like no file found, right? Then I guess the next thing would be that we'll actually create a try block, which would basically now take our input file. So we'll have our input file, and then we would actually convert it into the bytes and into our buffer. So we'll basically create our buffer from the bytes, and then like the idea is over here is that because this is a Next.js project, one thing to keep in mind is that essentially we also have to write our files to the public or the assets directory. Now this is not something that's mandatory to do, but it's something that you might actually be required to do, especially if you are like using Next.js. And of course, like in this case, like because think of Next.js as the server as well, right? So you are uploading a file, so you need your file to be hosted somewhere. So in this case, like what we are going to be doing is that we will as soon as we upload the PDF file, we select a PDF file, we will also write that particular file to our public assets directory. So we have this public directory over here, and we have an assets directory over here. So this is where we'll upload that PDF file that we basically select, and then we will see that whether that particular file has actually been successfully written to our assets directory or not.
That makes
So
sense.
yeah, and then once we have actually gone ahead and added it, then we will load it, and then we will split into the different chunks. So this is like why I'm just what I'm trying to do right now is we'll try to see if we are able to provide these comments to the cursor AI autocomplete and see if we are able to actually get that. So
That's a nice experiment. Let's
yeah,
see what happens.
let's try to experiment. So right now we have like we'll basically convert this into bytes, and I think like next what we'll do is that we will actually create our assets directory. So we will create a function for our assets directory where basically we need to publish or just post this file to that assets directory, right? So basically what we'll have over here is another method which is going to be essentially just now first checking that okay, if the file actually has been written successfully, right? Has been written successfully to the assets directory, and I don't know, not all of this probably. And finally, what we'll do is that yeah, but I think like this will be good enough. So probably now we can start off by first just drafting together our like the data. So let's see if we are able to get this to actually write the code for us. So it says that const form data. I think like we can just use data. In this case, we would of course, so this is perfect, like we would wait for it to actually get our form. So in this case, like as we upload that PDF file from our file picker, we are waiting for it to get all of this file, and then what we want to do is that we'll define our file over here. So in this case, our file is going to have file type. So one thing to keep in mind with TypeScript is that you have to define types. Some people love it, some people don't. I mean, some people hate it, but we will proceed with this. So we have to define the type over here, and then essentially, it might be that okay, it can either be of the file type or it might be of file type in case you don't actually upload the file. So in this case, we'll basically get our data. So there we'll have the file type as file. Otherwise, we'll just determine it as null. Now we can actually go ahead and remove this particular comment because we have accomplished this. Now let's actually go ahead and write this implementation. We'll have an if condition that if the file doesn't exist. So let's actually go ahead and do that. So in this case, we get a good response where we just say that no file found, and we will return a status error code of 400. So perfect. So this is like really good for, like, I think like this is where I do like it, that I'm giving it that specific instruction because we are aware as a high level engineer that these are the exact steps, and then I'm just quickly looking at, okay, whether it is accurately performing what I'm supposed to actually do. So
But this is also demonstrative of how it's important to have some basic knowledge before jumping into using
exactly.
an AI to code with. For example, if you didn't know what HTTP status codes were or which ones are the right ones, you wouldn't be able to figure out, hey, is the 400 the right status code I should be returning or not?
Exactly.
And you may just go blindly with it and make a mistake. So this is a good indication of having some of that basic knowledge first.
Yeah. And then in this try block, what I would want to essentially now do is have our buffer. So we'll first create our bytes. So first we'll say const bytes. And here, what we'll basically do is that, we have a method within, and over here, we'll basically wait. So we have a method within our file model, which is array buffer, which will allow us to create and generate those bytes. And then we'll create our buffer from this particular function. So this is good enough. Like this is working perfectly as we want it to do. Now what we want to do is we want to actually go ahead and actually create our assets directory, so that now essentially what we'll do is that we will append our path. So in this case, our path where we actually want to store our entire PDF is inside the public directory inside of the assets in the assets directory, right? So we will add that particular path. So in this case, let's see if the code is actually aware of this particular file path. I don't expect it to be, because usually these autocomplete are generally just limited to the actual file itself. But let's see if it is able to do it. So we'll define our const assets dir. So these are going to be our directory. And over here, what we'll do is that we'll join our path. And in this case, it is not correct because, of course, our file path is actually not just assets. In fact, it is public slash assets. So see,
it's
like
a good guess,
this is
though.
where.
It's a good guess.
Yeah, but it's a good guess, absolutely, without a doubt. Yeah, and then our we will go ahead and actually. So once we have defined our assets directory, we could probably add another simple if condition that if our assets directory actually does not exist, then we can actually go ahead and actually create one. So that's something that if you're interested in perhaps doing, then you can do that. But finally, like we have gone ahead and created our assets directory. Now what we'll do is that once we have gone ahead and done that, I think like the last step is now that we want to check whether the file has actually been written inside of our assets directory or not. So we have gone ahead and we have basically now created our assets directory. Now we also want to basically create our file path, because once you have now created that, yeah, this is where you want to store our actual this is where we'll store the file. Now we have to also create our file path, and this is where again perfectly fine that this is our file path, and we will go ahead and we will store within our assets directory our file name. Now we could directly, we don't need to use fs.promises, we could just use the right file, but it is giving us an error, which means that we probably might have missed one of
Maybe we missed an import somewhere.
Probably, because normally it should automatically do. So perfect, right file, perfect. So automatically it knew. This is great. No time to waste.
Let's save us a good 5 minutes of debugging, maybe.
Yeah. Because again, like I'm just trying this out on the first time as well. So okay, so now we have written the file. Now let's just create a simple method to confirm whether the file has been successfully written or not. So I can probably copy this over here and paste it over here. So let's confirm if our file actually has been created. So we'll just say let's see. Okay. So if, and over here we'll say that in case so over here, like in what we also want to do is that we also can import a couple of other things, which is import exist sync which is also part of the file system over here. So it basically just directly tells you that if that particular file path actually exists. So this is an inbuilt method within FS. So now it just gives us, that, okay, does the file path actually exist or not? So in this case, we will go ahead and, we will just see, and it says that yes, in case the file path does not exist, then we'll say that we actually failed to save the file, and we'll return, in this case, we'll return the error code 500, because this would more likely be an internal file, internal server error. So of course, like error 500 is mainly for internal file, internal server error. So this is good enough. So I think like now we have kind of concluded that part, which is the portion where we have now successfully been able to save our file. Now let's proceed to the more fun part, which will involve our integration with LangChain. So the first thing that we'll do is that we will go ahead and we would load and split our PDF file. So we'll load and split our entire PDF file.
Do you want to talk
So
for a
in this-
minute about what method of splitting you're using? What mechanism? Like, how are you choosing to split the PDF file?
Yeah, and in fact,
And
like I think like there are a number of those that are there. So there are. Sorry, I think you're saying something.
And chunk the file, basically. You're splitting it and chunking it.
Exactly. So our idea is that we have this entire PDF file. So first, we want to get all of the text that is there. Over here, we'll basically define our chunking strategy. That means what is the size of each and every chunk, because that is that chunk that then directly gets stored inside of Couchbase using the vector store, right?
And
So
why is the chunking strategy so important? It's really important, but why
Yeah.
is that so important?
I think probably it's also because of the fact that if you have too large of a chunk, then you somewhere will lose context, I would say. I mean, that's what I think, right? That
Or it's too small of a chunk.
yeah, that's an interesting question. I mean, what I personally feel, and I might be wrong over here, it's a live stream, I might be wrong, but I personally feel that it might be because of the fact that if you have too large of a chunk, or if you have too small of a chunk, then you probably might end up losing context, or you might not get very relevant results. I mean, it's also probably because of for performance reasons, that you don't want to have a very large chunk size, because essentially, if you think about it, these chunks are getting converted into embeddings, and then there is a limitation when it comes to how large an embedding can be stored. For example, in Couchbase vector store, the maximum amount of embedding that you can store is 2084 size, the embedding size itself. So I think like it's probably that I might be wrong. Ben, I would love to know from your side.
I think you're exactly right. And that's
Yeah.
exactly what I was going to say as well.
Mhm.
If anyone else has any other approaches or reasons, we would love to hear them in the chat as well. And hey, first of all, Robert, thanks for joining us. It is really great to have a free tier. And we're really, really excited to have you. So welcome to the stream.
Yeah, welcome, Robert. I know we have spent a lot of time discussing as well, but I think like it's important, right? These things are fairly important, and I know like because now we have given the context, the next steps would be fairly quick. So I think we might probably have to go a bit over time. Ben, if you have some time for like 10 minutes, should be good enough for us
I am
to.
happy. Anytime I get to spend with you, it's just a good time. This is
No,
good.
I mean this is great. So okay, perfect. So we have right now written the logic that once we have created the file, we will ensure that okay, like that particular file exists in our file system. So now we will go ahead and actually load and split our PDF file. So for that, what we'll do is we will define our const loader. So that will help us to actually import our PDF file. And for some reason, this is crying. Why is it crying? Let's probably ask in the chat. Why is this not creating? So it says that it should be, so it generates the response that it says that you need to import PDF loader, replace the PDF loader. Perfect. So that it should have just been PDF. Okay, perfect. So that's the chat. That's the chat portion. So if you have more complex issues that you're trying to debug, then the chat portion is great, because here again, one thing that we highlighted the last time is that it has a very powerful context adding capability, where you can add context of your file, dedicated folders, or your entire code base, or even documentation. So technically, I could have added documentation for LangChain and not have to actually lose context about what I'm doing right now and go to the LangChain docs. I could have stayed in my ID and added context of the LangChain docs. So that's the great part. Like, that's a really powerful feature where now the AI is, it has the knowledge of your entire code base and not just the current file that you're looking at. And again, it comes free of cost for now. So that's a great thing. But anyways, this is our loader, and we will also just have our raw docs. So this is like we just get all of our raw documents that we will get from our PDF loader. So in this case, like we are just fetching all of the entire document that we have. Now this is where we will go ahead and actually create our text splitter. So we will basically now split our entire text. So this is where we'll now start to use our LangChain. So in this case, we have the text splitter, and it pretty much like is able to and I think like over here we don't actually need language because we are going to be using English, so we can probably remove this this particular portion, and we don't actually need all this. So ideally we should be fine using the recursive text splitter with our defined
The
chunk size.
default,
And
so there, you think there's a default language of English if you don't specify, basically.
yeah, I think like by default I think it's taken, and I just need to define you. Perfect. So this is our text splitter, and now we are defining our docs, which essentially will now split our entire raw docs into these chunks, right? So we have now gone ahead and divided all of our entire docs into the chunks. Now what we'll do is we will create our embeddings. So this is what we want to do. So in this case, the embeddings that we'll define, again, I didn't have to do anything, and it just does it for me. Probably something that doesn't do perfectly well, but yes, we want to use the OpenAI embeddings. And in this case, like what we'll have to do is we'll have to pass the OpenAI key. So in this case, that's one thing to keep in mind. And that is our OpenAI key. Of course, I'll not show my OpenAI key because, for security reasons, I have
I mean,
pay,
why
I've,
not? I mean, it
yeah.
seems like a perfect thing to do. This also is
Yeah.
a good opportunity while you're putting in your OpenAI key to always remind people not to commit to any Git repository, or if
Yeah.
you're using Subversion or any other kind of any kind of history, any of
Exactly.
the publicly available, any of your private confidential credentials.
No,
Please,
it's
friends don't let friends commit their credentials in public repositories.
But one thing that I actually found out recently, Ben, is that in fact I was about to actually commit this same code from the
Chevet.
previous.
Oh no,
Yeah.
that's wild. What happened?
Yes, what happened was that GitHub code spaces saved me. So I was
Look,
about to do a git commit and git push. As soon as I did git push, it failed because it said that you
you may
have
not
an
know this, but
OpenAI key.
also on
Yeah.
any repository you create on GitHub, you can enable in the settings
Yeah.
a workflow that will automatically search for private keys and essentially warn you that you've leaked private keys. So there's a lot of utilities out there to help you not do something inadvisable, but it's also in the first place better to not do the inadvisable thing to begin with, which is
absolutely
don't put it out there.
Sure.
Keep it confidential.
But I was amazed by that feature that now you don't have to worry. I mean, of course, you have to remember that environment variables either always added to your git ignore file and ensure that so that is always something important to ensure. But yes, I mean, GitHub Codespaces has that automated capability. But what you mentioned about the automated workflow is also super important. Okay, perfect. So we have our embeddings, and now we can proceed with our Couchbase connection. So we will use our create Couchbase cluster endpoint that we have created in our previous session. And in this case, we can actually go ahead and define our config. So we can just define our Couchbase config over here. So this is a built-in method which will basically now define that since this is our vector store, we have to pass certain arguments such as our cluster, our bucket name, our scope name, our collection name, our index name, the embedding key that we need. So all of those are basically some of the arguments that we have to send as part of our vector store, because these are pretty much like defined, right? So these are something that we want to essentially send as part of our vector store. I can probably just go ahead and create this, but I don't want actually all of these. I just want certain things such as our cluster. And since these are going to be passed directly from our from all of our environment variables, so I can just send our bucket name. And if you want, like, we should probably find, yeah, so let's actually just copy this. We don't need to perhaps write this on our own. And I'll just quickly remove these default values, because of course we are going to be passing all of them from our environment variables, so we don't need to pass these default values. But it's always a good thing, like for some reason, let's say that in fact, like if you remember, when we were just discussing this related to our the issue that we were facing with the GitHub Actions, right? That
Exactly.
either you can pass the default in case like the environment variable fails to load. So that's
Exactly.
always a good thing.
Right.
To
It's
remember.
always nice to have a nice sane default. But
Yeah.
sometimes you forget that you have a default when you're doing testing. You're like, oh, the tests are passing. It's amazing. But your
Exactly.
default is saving your tush as opposed to exposing that your code may have some issues in it. So it's a
Exactly.
double-edged sword, like a lot of things.
Yeah, for sure. Perfect. So we have defined our config. Now we can go ahead and we can actually store these particular documents inside of the Couchbase vector store. So we'll just use an await method where we will have our Couchbase vector store, and over here we'll say the from documents. So in this case, like, these are the docs, these are the embeddings that we are storing, because we are basically storing both the original doc and the embeddings that we have generated, right? So in this case, like, we will store the embeddings and our Couchbase config that we have just defined. So this should be like good enough for us to define that, and then we can go ahead and actually do like a console log that in case our we have actually successfully created the vector store. So let's go ahead and define our successfully stored in Couchbase, so that when we try this out right now, try running this, we are actually able to successfully do that. And then what we'll basically do is that what we want to respond from this is that we want to basically return a next response that we have not only successfully embedded the PDF, but then what particular, like, let's say what particular file name we have actually gone ahead and so we can just have a return statement that mentioning that we have successfully saved our PDF file, whatever PDF file that we have generated. And I see like there is a couple of things that we can probably now just go ahead and close this out with. I know that we need to close this out. So the next thing would be that, okay, we can of course add a bit of our, so because of course, like, if you remember, this was part of a try block, so we'll also need a catch block, and we can just define our error in case like we had an error uploading a PDF file, right? So this should be good enough. So let's see if we
This
have
was pretty
everything
good.
in place.
Yeah.
And then
And Shell agrees with us as well. Keep up the good work, Chevet. You got some
Perfect.
encouragement from the audience.
Oh, nice. The only error that I feel is this one, which is so let's see how we can try to get this fixed. Ideally, this should have worked. In case, am I missing something over here? We have create Couchbase cluster. This should be good enough. Let's see. What does it say? So cluster is the resolved
It
cluster
seems
object.
like it's a promise issue of
Probably a
awaiting.
promise issue. Yeah, I think so.
The number one problem facing all JavaScript developers.
Always. Promises, they are always
Resolving promises, always.
Always. Okay, but it does not really give me. Did it give me a change? I'm not sure. Const cluster. Oh, perfect. Yes, I forgot it a bit. Yeah, but that only solved one issue. That didn't solve the bucket name issue.
Is it the same issue for each value?
I hope it does not expect me to add that config.
Do you need to define the variables prior to using them? Do you need to create empty variables?
I mean, I think so. I have those because let's see. That's a bit strange. Probably it's expecting me to get that, but ideally, okay. So probably what I can do is I can create a I can just have like a simple if statement over here that in case there is no bucket name that exists, then or scope name, then what I can do is we can say that the actual Couchbase configuration is okay. So we will actually have to define our entire configuration. My mistake, yes. I forgot to do that. So let's just define our const bucket name. In this case, I would actually get this from our process.env Couchbase bucket name.
This was the step we were missing. I see it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So we didn't actually do that. So this is our DB bucket. So let's actually, I don't want to do this because this is kind of a mundane task. Let's ask because we haven't really gotten a lot of chance to use Claude. So I'll give it this file. I will give it this routes.ts file. But let's say I actually give it the entire code base, and we'll ask it that this complete. So I'll just give it this. I'll give it this comment that complete the Couchbase config, right?
And
I mean, it technically does it for us.
Okay, and that's the definition of tedious work that it just did for us.
Yeah. So, I mean, we didn't had to do this, but in this case, like, because we don't have a process env, so we will just use embedding, and then text key can be a basic these are some default values that we get from this can be just text, and scoped index would be true. So in this case, this would be a true. Okay, perfect. So looks good. We still see this error has any type. Let's try to fix this in chat. But yeah, I think like all of these have been fine, but we are still getting this as an error. Let's see, why is it? Okay, so variable embedding key is
it's not properly typed, basically.
Okay, let's try to see if we are able to. Oh, this is kind of a weird bug. Okay, let's see. Okay, so it asks us to be a string. Okay. Oh, I didn't have the equal to sign. Silly. My bad.
Okay.
Okay. So now, let's see if we are missing anything. I think
I see an error with the patch.
Oh, where is our try
block defined?
We do.
Right.
Yeah, we do have this. Okay.
But is it within the scope?
I think so. So this is our try. Let's see where does this end. I think we might have missed. This is a perfect opportunity. Like we can just ask, just fix routes, not TS, whatever error that is. I think we can ask it to fix this try expected error. Let's see. It just saves us time.
Let's see if it works.
Yeah. Oh, it just says that without being able to see the full context. Okay, let's give it the context of our entire code base and try to see if it's able to fix it. So fix routes TS. So like again, this is what it shows, that AI is not perfect, and sometimes what you might end up realizing is that you can actually do fixing faster than having to rely on AI. So it's also important to understand that where exactly you might want to fix. So I mean, it's clearly not really functional.
Right.
So we might just have to quickly see where exactly. I think like we're just probably missing our
maybe a curly brace somewhere.
Curly brace somewhere. So we had created this Couchbase config. That's perfect. And before that, we had created all of our Couchbase config files. So I think, okay, perfect. I think this might be the case. We didn't complete our if block. That might have been the case. So let's return of error. Yes. So this is okay, perfect. So I think now, perfect. So we are.
Yes, we did it.
We did it. And now let's actually try to run this. So I'll just quickly ensure that.
We need a drum roll, Shive.
Oh yeah. Not quite. Let's see if the demo gods are with us. So
the drum rolls to summon the demo gods.
Drum rolls. Yes, perfect. I'll just quickly see if we have all of the dependencies installed. Okay, perfect. And now we'll do an npm run dev. Okay, let's see. So I'll go to our localhost 3000. So it loads up our fancy UI that we didn't have to write any code at all. All of the code was written for us by the by our by
With,
the
with, with the grace of
AI
Vercel's V0.
V0. Perfect. Now let's give it a PDF. Let's say I give it this PDF of this my friend's resume. Uh,
Amazing.
oh,
Is
it
your friend
closes
looking
in
for a
there.
job?
Probably.
Let's shout it out there. Chavez friends looking
Shout
for a
out.
job. All you viewers, check
Yeah,
out this PDF. We'll ask it questions on what
yeah.
this job should be.
But it did throw an error as usual. Let's see
As
what
usual.
error does it give us. I mean, let's be honest. Like we have experienced it that live streams are
Yes,
never complete without an error.
of
Okay.
course.
Let's see that what was the error that we got. I don't see any issue right now. Let's see. Uh, okay, let's try to see. Let's try to debug this. So buffer.file is an experimental feature. Mm, So I'm just trying to right now see what might be the cause of this issue. This says that it's an internal. So it says that it failed to upload the file, and this is line number 41. Failed to upload file. So it's basically failing over here, which is our API to actually ingest our PDF. So we have this particular route that we have created with the post request, but it is failing. So it's failing on this PDF uploader. So if we go to that particular PDF uploader, so this is our component. Let's see. So it's failing at this file at this line number 15. Am I mistaken? Let's see. Was just quickly trying to see that what might be the thing that's causing the issue.
What can we expand it a little bit so I can see as well?
Oh yeah, for sure. So it's failing at this particular method, which is our
Right.
PDF failing to
Is the
fetch
data
the
not
API.
what we expect it to be, or is the data not coming? Should we add some console logs? That's always my favorite thing
Probably.
to do with JavaScript.
Yes. That's a
Add
good
console
thing. Yeah.
logs everywhere.
So let's first add a console log as soon
Make
as we
sure
create a
that what
buffer.
we think it is what it actually is.
Yeah, perfect. So let's add a buffer. Let's also add a console log for our raw docs just to confirm whether we have that, and probably for our docs. So this should be fine.
Amazing.
Let's,
Again,
and then
we
just
need
the
to
one thing
reset
that we
the
want to,
server, or is it good?
yeah, and I just want to probably add a like, because we have this particular file over here which is we want to handle our API. So okay, perfect. So what we want to essentially do is we want to so this is where it's failing. We might just want to console log the response perhaps and
I think that
see
makes
if it generates the response. So I just want to see like what response it actually generates. So let's try to I think like it should hot reload, so I'm not concerned with that. So let's go back and go to our console now, and hopefully let's see if this gives us some better debugging. In this case, I'll upload this particular file. Okay, so it generates this response. It says oh, this gives us an internal server error, which is a bit strange. This is our ingest API, ingest PDF. It's not really. And okay, so
with the
here
actual
is
yeah.
we got all of our text. So okay, I mean we
Here's
are
the
getting our document.
Yep, that's our raw docs. Looks good.
Yes, so the raw docs are looking good, and then we also actually get our docs. So
Which is also good.
that's yes. So we are getting our docs. That means that we might just have to do a bit more of our error logging and trying to debug. So let's see. Go back to our route. So we did get our docs. That works well. Let's see if we can get our embeddings as well. So we'll just do the embeddings console log. Let's also just confirm. So we definitely didn't get this one, which is successfully stored. It's somewhere around this particular line. We could try to just see if we are able to get our cluster details. So let's see, console log cluster. If we are able to get this, and then I think like the only thing then probably is left is running actually this particular line.
Right.
So I feel it's somewhere around this particular line that might be causing the issue. We can try to just now refresh and quickly upload our file. Okay. Okay, so perfect. So let's see. So we get our embeddings, and this is our embeddings. And then we are using the text embedding ADM model as well. Looks good. Oh, I showed my API key. That was not good.
I think you might
But I can
disable
change
this API key.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, it did print our. So it didn't print the cluster information, if I'm not mistaken. So this is our client config, but this config is actually coming from OpenAI. So I feel that somewhere there's something probably not okay, and that yes, because we use see, this is where AI does not do well because you're not using the correct environment variables. Oh, that is this. Oh my god.
This is a great
That's
example in real time
in real time, yes.
of the limits of these
The
utilities.
limits of AI. Yep. Hopefully now it should be fine.
And Shafe's going to cycle his API key at the moment.
Oh, still something wrong. Is okay. I mean, let's see if I have an env example. Oh, I don't even have it happened. Okay, let me zoom in and let's try to see if my API key. Okay, yeah, my API key is not visible.
And you're going to cycle through a lot of these credentials very soon.
Yeah, we'll cycle as any person should. So we have DB collection. Let's see if we're using DB collection. Okay, that is fine. And then I just want to ensure that the index name is okay. So it is just index name. Okay. See this, rookie mistakes.
No, these are well understood mistakes.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. Now let's go ahead and upload a PDF. Oh, finally. Perfect. So this seems to be loading. We should finally see our cluster. Yes, we connect to our cluster. And there you go. Successfully stored in Couchbase. Perfect.
Brilliant.
You are able to
Brilliant.
successfully store. Yes. And but it says that okay. So this is something that we can probably fix for the as soon as we render the PDF. This is more of a I guess it says that it's missing the PDF, but let's just confirm if it actually stored it inside of the assets. So yes, it actually did store. So this resume, it did store it. The only reason it's not rendering it is because in the next step, which is basically defining our entire RAG application, we can actually go ahead and then render that particular PDF to do the rendering. But we have successfully been able to store this. And if we go to our Capella cluster, let's quickly sign in back. And I know we are probably way over time, but
It doesn't matter. We're doing great stuff.
Yeah. So let's go to our live stream section over here, and if we go to our, so you see, this is our docs, and we had 47 docs, and if we go to our query, yeah, perfect. So I think I can probably search specifically, right, if I'm not mistaken. So go to our shared and to our docs, and then I can actually write the SQL query over here where I can fetch the dedicated docs. Oh, perfect. See, Ashutosh Singh, we have their information. We have gotten all of the information. And by the way, if you're wondering, because we spoke about the index, I know, I think we didn't cover that, but this is where you actually go ahead and create a search index. And I think that's a good spot, probably, when to also share about your step-by-step guide on how to accomplish vector search with Couchbase with Node.js specifically. I think, can we find it on your GitHub? Probably
you can find it on my GitHub. It's almost done. But everything is done except for the integration with Couchbase Shell, which we have not talked about Couchbase Shell yet too much.
Couchbase Shell, yes.
talk about it soon. Yes, this repo, which I can share a
Mhm.
link in the chat.
Yeah.
Give me a moment.
Yeah, but the one thing, of course, like what you have to do is index your data, and I think we might have like a indexing. We have like a dedicated guide that we can probably share after the stream. But the idea is that you create that index and then you upload it to your Capella cluster, and you essentially can either do it manually, or with the advanced mode you can import the actual JSON file. So in this case, like you
Exactly.
can see the look at our index.json definition over here, which basically defines things such as the embeddings, the dimension of your embeddings, then what is the actual name of your index name. So in this case, it's PDF search, and then you provide the scope and the collection that will be used for this particular index. So as soon as you store your vector embeddings inside of your collection, then you would basically index it with the help of the vector index. So that is something that I did beforehand, because I knew that coding can take a bit more longer time, because we are not just like coding, we are interacting and we are doing a lot of knowledge sharing for everyone.
Of
So
course.
hopefully that should be good. Okay, so the last thing, which is actually the actually the biggest thing that we have to do, is now we have stored successfully our all of our files inside of the vector store. So perfect. That's our first step. Now we have to retrieve them, and in order to retrieve them, we'll basically now create this chat API where, of course, we have to handle the actual chat request. So when the user sends a request to the to the UI, we will showcase their chat, and then we will also retrieve. Then we'll of course use the RAG chain. So with LangChain, we have the RAG chains, or what we call as the retrieval chains. So essentially, this allows us to basically, and I think like I can go back over here. So we can essentially build an entire RAG application by defining this entire retrieval chain, right? So by defining that chain, we can pass our prompt, we can pass our retrieved context that we get from now. So of course, like we have stored. Then now we will retrieve the most common set of vectors or the embeddings based on a current prompt that we give. So we pass those retrieved embeddings or the chunks with our retrieved RAG chain, and then we generate the response.
Right.
Now I know that when we are probably a bit over time, how do we want to proceed? Because this will probably, what we can do is we can at least start to prototype and see how far we can go, keeping in mind that this might take a while, because we also have to build in the entire chat functionality over here.
I would
So
recommend that. I feel like we're at a moment where you have raised the intrigue for what's next,
yeah,
and the
what's next?
excitement is building. And I would
Yeah,
love to see this as the next step in a part 3, if you're
part
willing
3,
to
yeah,
do that.
probably. And I mean, like, we can just quickly jump on, right? We don't necessarily have to do this on YouTube. Like, if everyone over here, what this is probably an open call to everyone, that all of you can join our Discord server, because that's one place I personally feel that there's a lot of community connect, and we can also do live streams on Discord. So perhaps what we might end up doing is, let's see, probably we can discuss offline that if you want to do a part 3, because what we also want to do is we want to deploy this, right? We haven't gotten a chance yet to deploy this on Vercel. This unexpectedly took a bit more time, but that was more to do with the fact that it's also important to set the context for what you were explaining. So we can definitely do a number 3 where we'll now actually create a RAG chain. So just a high level thought, what we'll do is we will basically create a RAG chain. In this case, we will create our chat component where user sends a message, which is essentially the prompt to our LLM, right? And what we do is that now, using this prompt, we basically use our vector search embedding, right? And we find the most common vectors. So we basically prompt is sent to the vector store, to the Couchbase vector store, and we fetch the nearest vectors or the nearest embeddings, and then we pass all of this to our LangChain based RAG chain. right? And we render the final response. So the final response that we generate from the LLM, from the RAG chain, is then essentially displayed. All right. So we'll basically go ahead and display this on our chat. So that's the entire agenda to the in the chat component. So that's basically our agenda for this entire like this last part. And then finally, like once we complete that, then we will move on to deploying this on Vercel.
I think that's an exciting last step. I'm particularly excited to see you deploy it on Vercel in part 3 of next week. Shive, this has been absolutely brilliant. I think we went on a crazy adventure in the world of Cursor and Claude and OpenAI, embeddings, figuring things out, diagnosing and debugging front-end issues in real time, 2 back-end devs for front-end issues. Thank you, everyone, and thank you particularly, Shive, for all this work. Please join us again next week for an exciting third-part installment. This has been brilliant. Until then,
thank you so much.
Join us on Discord, continue the chat and all the conversation on everything. This has been really, really amazing. Thank you all.
Thank you so much.
Have a great day, everyone else. Bye.